I'm joined today by Raj Shourie. Raj, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Adam. It's great to be here.
First things first, congratulations. We're talking a couple weeks after the USBC where your team won the team trials. How exciting was that for you?
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable because there was this massive come from behind victory in the final, and my teammates played phenomenally through the whole event. And so it was great. This is my second team trials. The first one was last year, where we, with a slightly different team, reached the final for USA One, but then got smoked by Adam Kaplan and Finn and gang. And so this was terrific.
Yeah, it's okay to lose to the eventual winners of the Bermuda Bowl.
That's how I felt about it.
That's right. So what do you do when you're sitting out that last few sets? Are you watching on ViewGraph?
I am a watcher. I will watch. My rule that I've been given by Gavin is that if you are going back in to play another set, you are not allowed to watch, because he knows otherwise I would watch anyway. And so if we're like on the first day of the final, we went back in and played the last set to give the guys the most running room on the last day. So on that day, I didn't watch, but on the final day, I did watch. Now, sometimes what we will do is we will go, I play tennis at these events. Sometimes people will see me wandering around with a tennis racket. I do go to do the sauna and that sort of stuff too. So I'll sometimes watch from the sauna, but most of the time I do watch.
What's more stressful, playing or watching your teammates in the last set?
Well, it's definitely watching, but I have a way to lower the stress, which is that I don't watch the card play so much. I watch mostly the bidding, because most of the time the bidding goes quicker and you don't have this sort of situation where you know what's right. The guy, he has to lead a heart, and you're waiting. And they're thinking for 3 minutes, like, lead the heart. So that is more stressful. In the bidding, it's just more interesting, what's going to happen. And sometimes, of course, like, hey, don't blast off into the stratosphere and bid slam. But most of the time, that's what I do. So I watch both tables and I switch once one's bidding and the other one's playing. I usually just switch.
Interesting. All right, let's go back to the beginning. How did you learn bridge?
So I was introduced to the game when I was about 11 years old in Chennai, in India. My grandmother's sister taught my mom and me. And when I say introduced to the game, I mean, I think I learned probably what Stamen was, perhaps, but I definitely didn't know what a transfer was. I had a little book that was the original Finn Goran book, which I read, and that was pretty much it. And my grandmother's sister is a really amazing player, represented India in the Venice Cup, and still is a great player at the age of 95. So I had a wonderful person to introduce me to the game. But then we moved from Chennai in about a month or two, and that was it. And I never really played. My mother continued to play for, a long time. I would play on occasion if I went back home in her foursome or whatever, and that's it. But I never really played until COVID. And during COVID, we were all sitting around. And again, my mother said, hey, maybe we should try and do a family game. Nobody's doing anything across the world. So we started a family game once a week. And we got my grandmother's sister, who's now in her 90s, to play with us, who's still great. And it was my mom and me and another rank beginner. And that's how it started in COVID. And I was more or less a rank beginner, and my mom, despite having been playing for 35 years, was not much more than that as well.
Wow. So what was the curriculum like? How did she teach you?
So initially, she was just sort of saying, hey, let's play. I'll teach you a little bit about the bidding. I knew a little bit. This other family member of ours knew almost nothing. So we would just play, and it was kind of fun. And at some point, every now and then she'd say, okay, I think I'm going to do a little lesson on doubles. Before we start playing today, I'm going to talk for 10 minutes about what the various types of doubles are, and, that sort of thing. Or, how do you respond to opening bids or whatever it is. And then at some point, again, this was because of my mother, she said, well, maybe you should really take some lessons and not have the rest of us hold you back. And my mother's cousin is also a great player, lives in Hong Kong, represented Hong Kong, China in the Olympiad, and she gives lessons. So I started a once a week lesson with her. And that we probably did for a good 6 months or so. At which point she said, "Look, I think you should probably find somebody in the US." And then we're still in COVID, so I have never played a hand of live duplicate bridge. And she found a video of someone's online, and she said, "This guy seems pretty good. Maybe reach out to him." So I reached out to him. Again, I knew nothing about any of this. His name is Eli Jolly, and we started playing. We started playing once a week or thereabouts. And then at some point, Eli said to me, "Live bridge is coming back. There's going to be the Austin Nationals. Do you want to come?" And so that was my first hand of duplicate bridge. I'd never seen a bidding box. I had no idea how a tray worked. I had no idea that the cards went back in the tray. And we played a couple of days there.
So during COVID, you're getting into this. What was it about bridge that fascinated you?
So I had always liked it. I mean, even though I had very little experience, I remember as a kid finding it a great game and interesting and fun. And, for me, I do like puzzles and games and stuff like that, but I'm not really a chess player. I had not played backgammon much. But this somehow, for whatever reason, it just always attracted me. And maybe it was also a family thing. I mean, the fact that we did have in the family a lot of people who had played at high levels and so forth, that probably had something to do with it. But I really enjoyed it.
And then going to that nationals for the first, and this is your first duplicate event, is going to the nationals.
Yes. First, so it's actually quite funny. So I tell Eli. Eli says we should go to the Austin Nationals, and I say, "Okay, how does that work?" And then he says, "Well, look, we should play imps. Let's play imp pairs. That seems like the sort of event that probably works better. You don't have to grind every trick and match points and so on." I was like, "Okay." And he said, "We should play the 0 to 10K imp pairs." So I say, "Well, what does that mean? What is 0 to 10K?" And he said, "Well, that's for people who have between 0 and 10,000 master points." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I think I have 10. So we'll come last. But that's fine. It'll be fun." And to his credit, Eli said, "No, I don't think we'll come last. It's a 2-day event. I actually think we have a pretty good chance of qualifying for the second day." And I was like, "All right, well, fine, whatever. I mean, we'll come last, but it's no problem, really." And we go, and miraculously, we qualify actually in second position. And miraculously, at the end of the event, we come second.
Second, yes,
And
remember
so,
that.
and this starts with me not knowing that the cards get placed, horizontally if you lose and vertically if you win the trick, and how they go back in the tray, and all of this stuff. And obviously, after that, I was pretty hooked.
It's pretty incredible to go from basically not knowing bridge in 2020 to
Right.
winning the team trials in 2026. That's probably close to unprecedented, would be my guess. What do you attribute that meteoric rise to?
Well, I think it's fair to say that my results definitely have exceeded my skill. And I put that down to having good partners and teammates for the most part. But yes, I mean, I definitely have, I've worked on it a lot. There's no question. I think in particular, where I feel like I've been able to close the gap the quickest or the most with the sort of the truly great players is on the bidding. I started out working a lot on bidding, and I feel like now I feel quite comfortable bidding in any situation with anyone. I feel like we're likely to go as a partnership. We have a decent shot of going plus against anybody in the bid. In the card play, that's going to be a long, long time for me. I mean, I think I do my best. I have certain things I do. I try to work on and so forth. But at the end of the day, like if we're in a really tight 3-note trump that requires, some sort of highly technical, play to make, I'm hoping the way we engineer it is that Gavin declares it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, like I have my moments, but for the most part, I'm hoping to go plus in the bidding and not go too much minus in the card.
So what was the regimen you put together? Like, how did you teach yourself how to bid?
Yeah. I got the basics from my aunt in Hong Kong and my great aunt in Chennai. But the thing that really changed it for me was finding Gavin's stuff online. So my partner, Gavin Wolpert, has a lot of content online. He has a series called the Master Series that sort of aims to teach people sort of modern US expert standard bidding. And it's quite extensive. There's lots of material. And I found it initially through Eli. He sent it to me. And then I really got hooked. I thought the way Gavin described stuff was great. And so that was really step one, is to sort of understanding, what the various parts of a system are and how to build system as well as judgment. And those things I think I got from Gavin. The practice was really qubits. I found qubits and I have been a lot of hands on qubits with lots of different people across the world, and it has really, really helped. So I think those two things were probably the way I short circuited. I didn't have as much bad stuff to forget, for one thing, which I think a lot of people are taught certain things, then you become set in that way, and then it becomes harder to really change. I had nothing. I was kind of a tabula rasa, a blank slate. So I could learn, quote unquote, the right way from the beginning, which I think helped. I did a lot of work on qubits. And then the other thing I would say is I tended to try, when I started to develop a real partnership with Gavin, I decided I was going to take over writing the system notes. I said, look, I'll write the notes in a way that makes sense to me and that will help me remember. Because I'd seen lots of different formats of people's notes, and some of it is, when it is just sequences of auctions, I found those very hard to read. I wanted it to be written in English, where, I could put in a little note that, hey, this is why it's this way. And then that would actually help me down the road remember it, and so forth. So I took over the notes. We don't have a lot of notes compared to, I think, most partnerships. We have, I don't know, 40-ish pages of notes,
That's
which
pretty
I've
good.
built. Yeah, but there are people who have, like hundreds.
Yeah.
To me, that it's definitely not our style. We tend to play mostly fairly simple, and even our 40-ish pages is 40-ish pages of, sentences written in English by me, not of just sequences of auctions. But I took over the notes, which I think was very helpful. And then sometimes I'd write it in a way that wasn't necessarily 100% correct, and then he'll say, listen, this just reads weird, like can we write it somewhat differently, because I think it'll serve us well to be a little more specific here or whatever. But and then I really focused a lot on competitive bidding agreements. What do we do against weak no trump? What do we do against multi? What do we do against even things that are fairly common in the, like Flannery, like what do you do against transfer overcalls if they're bidding, those sorts of things. That I think that's actually the longest section of our notes, is all those sort of competitive things.
It should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it really helped. When we first started playing, one of the first tournaments we did was in Sweden. And in Sweden, anything goes system-wise. People play all kinds of random things, forcing passes, all strong diamonds, everything, like all kinds of things. And everyone's playing multi, which at the time in the US was quite uncommon. And so it really gave me that sense that, look, you need to know what you're doing against all of these different things. And so I tried to get as many of them down on paper as possible. One of the things that really does help us as a partnership is we don't tend to have too many screw ups in the bidding. We know our system. We don't play the most complicated stuff, but we know what we play. And what has surprised me now, playing for a few years against high level competition, is that even the best pairs in the world, even people who've been playing together for decades, still screw up system. And
Amazing.
am so glad they do, because that is my only chance of going plus against them, because it's not going to be because of my stellar declarative.
Are there any cool conventions or treatments or anything that you've learned from Gavin, particularly in competitive auctions, that you have found to be big winners?
There are things that I've learned from him that I think are cool. Do they really matter in the end? I'm not sure. I mean, I like them. I think they're good. I think what we play over at Two No Trump is nice, but mostly because we actually know what we do, and a lot of people don't know what they do. And so when my partner opens Two No Trump and I have a hand with the minors, I'm thinking this is probably pretty good, because it may well go wrong at the other table, even if it's a pretty decent pair. And so it's more stuff like that. We often say that if you screw it up once, you've probably gone negative EV for life from all the little wins that you might get of, half an imp here or there. So as long as you don't screw it up ever, you're probably going plus with most things.
Tell me how you use qubits, because volume is important, but getting the feedback is even more important.
At the beginning, it was mostly volume because I just needed the reps. I also found that I wanted to do it at speed because what I was trying to develop is pattern recognition and the ability to not have to think too much and just be able to make the bids by rote. Everyone always says, like, don't play too fast and don't bid too fast. I actually think when you're practicing, particularly bidding, I gained a lot from practicing too fast because it developed this sort of second nature type of approach to bidding that I think is useful. So that was one thing. The second is I liked bidding with lots of different people from all over the world. And that helped because, I would learn different things. I would see different approaches. One of the things that we've done more recently is if we're trying to think about switching anything system wise or adding something system wise, we will bid a bunch of hands on qbids specifically tailored to those parameters and then see which way we want to go. An example of that, one of the things we play that is almost uniformly hated by experts is we play after a strong two club opening, we play two hearts as bust.
I love it.
Right. Everybody hates it. Everybody hates it. Funnily enough, we've actually had some pretty good results from it.
It's good. If you use the parish convention and over it, it's really good.
Well, then you could get out at the 3 level as well. So anyway, so we play two hearts bust and everybody always made fun of us for it. The teammates were like, you can't play that, etc. At the World Transnational in Argentina, we had a hand where Gavin opened two clubs. I bid two hearts and he passed because he had hearts. And we made 8 tricks in hearts against Moira and Baki. And they were just, Moira, he was unbelievably triggered by this because he knew that, and there's no chance that's happening at the other table. And it was great. And of course it has disadvantages and whatever. But one of the things that we did was we said, all right, well, one Sunday we bid 4 sets of qbids, 96 hands of all 2 clubs, and then followed by, various types of responder hands. And just to decide like, hey, what do we really want to do? Do we want to play two hearts bust? Do we want to play parish? Do we want to not? Do we what do we want to do? And then decided at the end of that what we wanted to do. We've done some similar things like that where we have used it to simulate in a way, just bid a bunch of hands so that at least it's come up. Yeah. Now, Gavin and I now basically bid 1 set a week, which is the qbids weekly, and that's pretty much all we do on qbids. But I still bid lots of qbids with lots of different people.
When you do it with other people, do you bring hands to Gavin and like, how would we bid this?
Sure,
what do you think about this?
All the time. Yeah, that's mostly the reason I do it is then send them to him and say, hey, now how should this have gone? One of the other nice thing about writing my notes is that most people who play with me, I just send them my notes and then they're playing that. And, that works out well. And I'm willing to have a page of exceptions or 2 pages of exceptions with anybody, but I'm not willing to write new notes. I handle the exceptions too. I write those out.
What sort of things when you've played with new people have they objected to or insisted upon for this page of exceptions?
Well, two hearts bust, definitely a controversial point. There
enough.
are some people who won't do that. Most of the time, it's more additional things that they'll suggest that we add. So I play, over the last year, I played almost every day online with the great Jacek Pijola, Pepsi. I played pretty much every day online with Pepsi, and it was an unbelievably great experience for me. And Pepsi is a fantastic player, great partner, and
they're sorry to have lost
just
him.
really, really tragic. But so when I played with Pepsi, he read my notes and he said, okay, we'll just play that. And then once in, every few weeks to a month, he'll say, hey, maybe you consider this. He's like, I don't want to change anything, And I said, okay, well, maybe I'll consider that and I'll send it to Gavin too. It'll make my life easier if I can put it into the general notes. And there were a few things like that we did. Things like what we do against Polish Club, for instance. That one, obviously made sense to get Pepsi's view on what one should do against Polish Club. That seemed like a fairly obvious thing to do. And
yeah, that makes sense.
That's what we did.
Yeah. So how did you actually meet Gavin? You were looking at his videos and stuff.
I was looking at his videos, and then I was at the Providence Nationals. Again, I'd gone and I played a few days there. And by then I'd watched his videos and I met him in an elevator with his kids. And we talked for a few minutes and Then at some point I booked a lesson with him online. I think that's what started it. And we initially started working on defense because I found that that time I felt like my bidding was okay, my declare play was okay, defense was really weak. And so we started working on defense. And yeah, and then I think at the New Orleans National, I had dinner with him and Jenny, and we were talking about tournaments. And I said something about Europe, and they said, "Oh, well, you should think about Sweden." And because that they had, as young people, played a lot in Sweden, and so that was the first tournament I did with Gavin. Yeah, and when we went to Sweden, we had no system notes or anything. We started the system notes the night before in Sweden, and he started doing them in a Google Doc, which I then later took over afterwards. But we did surprisingly well. We had been set up with these teammates who he didn't really know, but they turned out to be Christian Bake and Tor Ivan Grude. They were
Even worse.
that could have definitely been worse. And each set we would come back from, and I would look at the scores that they had at the other table. I'm like, these guys are they know what they're doing. But we ended up making the quarterfinals of the Chairman's Cup in Sweden, which is pretty amazing. That was my first time ever on ViewGraph. I had a great set on ViewGraph against Joe Grew, where I passed two splinters in the same set, and that's eventually how we lost. But it was a great experience.
A learning experience.
Yeah.
So how did it progress from there to I want to sponsor teams and go whole hog with this?
Yeah. So initially, I didn't really think I was good enough to play at the highest levels. I was playing sort of the next level, the second level events and stuff like that at nationals. And Gavin obviously was on a team. He was on the Spectre team and whatever. So we played a couple of international things. So we played Sweden and we played Iceland. And around then was when the Spectre team was breaking up, and so we decided to give it a go. Initially, we didn't have set teammates. I was happy to just play with different people in different events and see how it went. And that's still sort of been the case. Like, we will play with lots of different people. We now have, for the next cycle, we do have the Aussie Kiwis, as I call them, the Sartaj, Jandy, and
Great team.
Wibbly and Nabil, who are phenomenal and great guys as well. And so that's our team for the next few events.
So what does your work with Gavin on a week by week, month by month basis look like? You said you do the one set on
We
Qbids.
do the one set on Qbids. We have a one standing appointment a week for a couple of hours on a Thursday. These days, we mostly just play. We play in a team match usually. He streams them, and I really like the fact that he streams them because that means that it makes me accountable. Because if it's going out to the world, there's some greater consequence for doing completely stupid things, which otherwise I
It's
would
like
do
being on
really.
ViewGraph. Yeah.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And more than that, even, is that after the sets, I can watch them and I know exactly what he was thinking at every play and every card, every bid. And it's hugely valuable. And I'm 1,000% willing to deal with any embarrassment of exposing stupidity to the world to get that, because it gives me great real time feedback. I mean, I play the sets and very often I immediately watch his video to see what he was thinking or what he was thinking I was thinking. It's really pretty unusual to have that. So that's what we generally do. After the last trials, we went through and looked at every board in a pretty detailed way. And at the trials, that's great to do because all the cards are right. You have everything online. Most tournaments you don't have. But so after the last trials, we definitely did that.
So what does your review look like after an NABC when you don't have that full record except when you were on ViewGraph?
Not very extensive. Like, usually he will, if there's something in the moment, he'll occasionally say something in the moment. Like, in the moment meaning after the set or after the match or whatever. Maybe there's some osmosis that I don't know how much of that stays. But if there's a set on ViewGraph, I actually sometimes I sometimes ask other people to watch our sets and discuss them with them too.
But you don't have like a formal review process after the tournament.
we don't have a formal review. We will, going into a tournament, I tend to do these days, I tend to read my notes and so on, but the reality is I kind of know my notes. And so there's a little bit of note reading that happens. But then what I spend most of my time on these days is Bridge Master, because that's where I feel like at this point, that's what I need to improve at most, is just grinding out those tough declare play hands. And Bridge Master, I think, is a really good tool
It's
for
an
that.
incredible tool, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. So I don't do the level 5s. Those are impossible. They don't come up. But even just the level 2s and 3s
You
are,
got to get them all right.
you got to get them right. Those are the ones you have to get right. And then if you ever get a level 4 one right, you feel really good about yourself.
Yeah.
But
I challenge myself. I teach a declare play class,
mhm,
and I will just blind
mhm.
do level 2 and 3s with
Yep.
them, right?
Yep.
When I'm teaching declare play, and I'm like, I better get this right. I'm the
Right.
teacher. This is only
Right.
level 2, right? If I
Right.
mess
Right.
this one up, I'm going to
Right.
look like an idiot. So that
Yeah.
puts a little pressure on me, but I think that's good.
Yeah. Well, and 3s, you can get a lot of them right doing them in Bridge Master. The 4s, you can get some of them right doing Bridge Master. I think they're pretty hard at the table to
They're
get
much
even a,
harder at the table, right?
yeah.
There's a little bridge master syndrome of, okay, what's the problem
What's the
here, right? I
problem?
know this is a
What's the
problem.
trick? Okay, 5-1, is it going to break 5-1? Can I handle 6-0? Can I handle, okay, fine. This is what I
Yeah.
think they're getting at, which a lot of people will get out of that discipline at the table. But I think that's what I mostly try and do in advance of a tournament. Just crank out level 2 and 3 and 4.
What about when you're at a tournament? What is your routine like?
The Gavin and I usually have breakfast. I'm not a big breakfast eater, but I've come to the point of view that some breakfast is a good thing.
That 10 o'clock start, you need
With
some
the 10
fuel
o'clock
in
start.
there.
Yeah, you need something. So we'll eat breakfast. I don't do any exercise in the morning these days. What I try to do is play tennis. The issue is that a lot of the people who would play tennis are playing the afternoon sets when I'm playing.
That's the problem. Yeah.
So I will actually, in advance of a tournament, try and find a tennis location and try and find a pro to hit with.
We should play sometime.
Yeah, of course.
Have you found a court in Minneapolis nearby?
I did look very briefly, and there's definitely places.
I'm on a 6-person team, so I can try to take some
Okay.
afternoons off and
Yeah.
hit some balls with you. I'd love
Yeah,
that.
that would be great.
Because I can't do it in the morning and then
Right.
play. I'm just exhausted.
Well, I know when I first started, I was doing that, but I found that was less good. Now, what I try to do is I try to play tennis in the afternoon. At the team trials, there's also a badminton place that I discovered, and I grew up in India playing badminton, so I have rediscovered badminton, at least when I'm at the team trials. And then I like doing the sauna and cold plunge thing. So I will often do that. I'm really bad at going to the gym, so I often won't do that, but I will do tennis. So that's...
Do you go to the gym in your home life when you're not at
No,
a bridge
I play tennis.
tournament?
I play
Play
tennis.
tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
much more fun. Did you know Gavin before he started his whole regimen with the
Yes.
Pilates and like you were there? You
Mhm.
introduced him to the guy, right? It was your
Well,
wife's.
there was a guy, my wife's Pilates instructor, actually said something to him that triggered him to do all this.
Yeah, he told me that in our conversation on the podcast. So what have you seen in him? Because it's been a transformation. I've seen
Yeah.
it just physically.
Yeah. Well, I think that he is definitely, from my perspective, playing way better than he was when I first started.
He was a chump back then.
He was a complete chump. Complete chump. No, but he's actually much better.
How does that manifest itself? Like, how do you notice?
So look, it's not that he used to make a ton of mistakes and now he doesn't make mistakes. I mean, he's pretty good players. But what I have noticed is some of the decisions that he makes are more often right. And I don't know why that is, but they are. His opening leads are better. When he's thinking about a hand, if it's a real tough declare a play hand or whatever, he will nail it. Not to say that he wasn't going to get most of the way there anyway, but the important situations, I find he gets the hands right more often than he used to. And it's not just mistake avoidance. It's actually decision making and getting the tough decisions. Just he's more often on the right side of those these days.
And you
I
think
think
that's a direct result of diet and exercise and
Well, I think,
lifestyle
to
change?
be honest, I think it's mostly an issue of breathing. Because when I first met him, he was very strange in this one respect, is that he didn't really breathe. So, and I would notice this because we would play tennis, and you look at him and you look at me, and you would think that I'd be huffing and puffing and he wouldn't. And it's the exact opposite. His breathing was just, he'd be gassed in an instant. And it's because he says this, that he didn't really know how to breathe. So when he played tennis, he would hold his breath. And I think when he played bridge, he would hold his breath too. And it turns out, I think, that, getting oxygen into your brain is probably a good thing. And so that's my theory. Other things at tournaments, like I'm definitely not closing down the bar at the events every night. But on the other hand, I don't believe that you can't have a drink if you feel like having a drink. I think it's fine.
A nice glass of wine.
Nice glass of wine is
That's
fine.
nice.
It's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I would say more often than not, I'm not doing that. But I think it's totally fine. I do think doing some whatever exercise you can is good.
Do you like reading bridge books? Was that part of your study as you were learning the game?
I have a decent number of bridge books. I have read less than half of them, I would say. There's a Mike Lawrence book on how to find your opponent's high cards. It's a very good book. It's short. I think there's a Victor Marlowe and Nico Gardner book called Card Play Technique or the Art of Being Lucky. I actually think that's an excellent book for kind of, decent but not hyper technical declare play stuff or card play stuff. I mean, I usually have a bridge book or two somewhere floating around, either on my nightstand or in my backpack or whatever. Do I read them? Sometimes.
So if someone came to you and says, Raj, I want to do what you did. I want to really dig in and learn this game and be able to hold my own at the highest levels in 5 years or whatever. And I have the time, the resources to devote to this, but I need you to help me create the plan. What do you tell them?
Well, I would tell them, for me, it was definitely starting with bidding. Make sure that you can bid, with and against anybody. And I think that for somebody, with the time and inclination and, that is an achievable thing. And I think that I am surprised at how far that gets you. So that's what I would tell them. And I would give them my whole spiel on how you do that and whatever. But I think that if you think you're going to play the cards as well as Joe Grew or Vince DeMoy, you're probably not. If you're picking it up when you're 50, it's just not going to happen. But you can bid. You can bid as well as them, and you can, it'll take you some time, maybe not quite as well, but you can be pretty damn close, and you can probably make fewer errors than a lot of top partnerships do. And so that's sort of what I would start with. And then I would say it has really helped me to play with lots of different people of lots of different styles from around the world. The only way you can do that, I think, is online. So most people say that, online isn't so great and they'd much rather do things in person. And of course, there's a huge benefit to playing in person and all of that. But to really get the reps and the quality opposition and quality partners that you can get online in person is very difficult. Like, you have to live in one of 2 or 3 specific places in the world and get very lucky. While online, I can play with anybody from anywhere, and it's phenomenal. It's been just great experience for me. The other thing I would say is, for me, one of the things that's been important is not being intimidated playing against anyone. And I think part of it is figuring out that everyone seems to make mistakes. Bob Hammond says we're all bad. No, I'm bad, you're worse, right? That sort of thing. But there's an element of truth to that. I mean, some of these guys are incredibly good, but they still make lots of mistakes. And so, on a good day, if they make the mistakes and you don't, you're going to beat them. And I think for a lot of people starting out in my sort of position, they tend to want to play against, if you're playing a team match, you tend to want to play against the pro client pair or the sponsor pair or whatever on the other team. I most of the time would rather not. I'm kind of happy playing against the pro pairs because I feel like it's, in a way, it's kind of in somewhat to my benefit. I find that a lot of amateur types like me are intimidated playing against pros. And so if I play against the pro pair on the other team, that means that they're playing against Cran and Vince DeMoy. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah.
So I would rather sit us in the same seats as the sponsor pair on the other team and play against the pros. For the most part. I mean, it's not always, but and I think it comes from, the things that I've worked on are bidding things and dealing with different systems and whatever. So that sort of thing doesn't really bother me that much, at least now. And so, that has I think that definitely has helped, being willing to play against their better pair. It's sort of strange. Like sometimes when we have the seating rights, we'll go and sit ourselves against the pro pair, and it's a little bit of a surprise. Like they thought, why did that happen? And and I would rather be in the same seat as the amateur at the other table, trying to have my decisions be compared with theirs, as opposed to rolling the dice and sitting against the sponsor pair at the other team. But I think for the most part, for me, where I've worked the most, and I think where it's helped me the most is really trying to work on bidding, playing against good people, fairly obvious sorts of things. Obviously, having good teammates helps. There's no question about that. And then look, I definitely do put a lot of time into it. There's no question about that. I put a lot of time into it. After we're done today, I'm gonna, I'm playing a match, in a couple hours. Finished my Cupid set in the morning with Gavin. Whatever. It's definitely do put the time into it. But I think it's actually possible. I do think it's possible.
What does your wife think about all of this bridge nonsense?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like when I first started, I was kind of quiet about it. I didn't say much, right? I was clearly doing something. I was doing something. It was COVID. I was doing something, and
Yeah, you couldn't really hide it in COVID, right? You're in the same house.
right, you're in the same house, but how much and how you're sort of doing stuff on your phone. What am I doing on my phone? I'm answering messages or I'm bidding Cupid's hands. It's not totally clear. But she's not a bridge player. But I think she's now, and initially she found it sort of curious, but she's always been really very supportive. She's like, look, if you want to do that, that's great. She now will occasionally say, she's like, when she discusses it with other people or whatever, she definitely points out that I spend a lot of time doing. But she's been incredibly supportive, because obviously, I do travel quite a bit. Obviously it does take up a lot of time.
What does she do when you take 10 days to go to Minneapolis in July?
She has a full-time job, and she has a real, she's
She
not
has a
sitting
life.
around. She has a life. She's definitely not sitting around waiting for me to, whatever, hang out at home. So we have 4 kids, 2 sets of twins, two that just finished college, and then 2 with us in 8th grade. When I stopped working, she went back to work, and so I sort of took over the stuff with the kids. And
Are you
and
teaching
now
the 8th graders
the 8th
bridge?
graders they've learned a little bit.
Perfect age.
They've learned a little bit, but it has not really taken. So we'll see.
Do they think it's cool that their dad is a bridge champion?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so.
Give them a
Yeah.
little street cred? Probably not.
Probably not street cred. So I think it does more, it does more definitely with the older crowd, right? So more people like our age. So when my wife talks to people, I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh my God, that's amazing. But kids, not so much.
Well, hopefully you can get them a little excited eventually.
Yeah.
There's a certain aspect, like my dad does it can't be cool, right? Is that still kind of the attitude of the youth?
Maybe. I don't know. They know that Gavin does it, and he seems like he's not totally uncool, and they know his kids do it. I don't know if you've ever played against them, but they
Yeah.
are the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Raj, thank you. Congratulations again. This has been great getting to know you a little bit better here, and
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.